Welcome back to Shawn's Thoughts. You're here with me live in a city called Hope BC, and I thought today I would do something different. So, right now, before I begin, I just had to move the camera because a pedestrian, a child actually, was going to walk into frame. So, anyways, thank you for joining me today. And I thought, as I said, I would do something that is a little different today. So, what we're looking at right now is a wood carving of a, well, you might recognize him. This was Sylvester Stallone back in the 1982 days when he essentially arrived in this town to film a movie called First Blood, and it became the Rambo series. So this is where we are today, and we're looking at this wooden carving of that. You know, not a big fan of the gun. I actually was going to take a picture of this originally, and I thought, no, I don't really want to. Actually, that was at a day that I was here a few days ago when there was a lot of people, but I've been called to, do something a little different today. So what we're going to do is we are going to walk because there's other wooden carvings as well, and you can see the one coming up. And I really wanted to highlight these, just mind the juddering of the camera. We are going to sit down, of course, and talk, but I wanted to start off by kind of showcasing these amazing works of art that sit here all year long for people to like. Well, the sign says don't sit on them or stand on them, but I'm sure that there's a lot of people that do that anyways. So these are wooden carvings that are done by, I guess, the local people or someone who was local. And this is a kind of like a totem idea of a lion with the elk on the bottom. And then there is over here a beautiful, beautiful eagle, I guess. Yeah, that looks like an eagle. Move around to see its head coming out of the wood like that. Just wonderful. And then here is another one. I'm doing my best to limit the amount of people that I show in here. You can kind of see that one's for the purple lights. Lovely thing. And then we're going to go and look at this other one before I head into the park that's right behind me. So mind me as we go walking along the grass. So thank you so much for joining and sharing your attention. Now, if you are on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music, be aware that I was just showcasing some art prior to me starting this podcast. So, I do most of my stuff as a video, and then I'm able to upload it directly to these other sites as audio only podcasts. So sometimes the true nature of my podcast doesn't fully get realized without the video portion of it. However, I wanted to expand my reach. Not my reach, but, I guess the reach, sure, whatever. It is what it is. So, yeah, I think today we'll just sit down here in front of this amazing park that's in the middle of Hope, British Columbia. Now, as I was telling you, hope is something that interesting. Actually, the word itself, hope. I've often talked about or thought about often about, the idea of people having hope. Now, for me, there's two kinds of hope. There's the hope that, you just hope it's going to get better and you keep hoping, hoping, hoping. And, there's that saying that I heard, I was on the Samadhi video, said, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. And to me, that resonated quite strongly because, when we hold on to hope as the only way through something, I don't really need to keep this as a do no thing, so I'm going to step into frame now. When we hold on to hope as, our last resort, the last thing that we're holding on to, and yet we still remain complacent or remain in the same situation we were before, often that actually holds us in a pattern of inaction. And so I feel often, as I've talked about before, words are often used to maybe hide our or make up for our inaction. So when we are all hoping for something and we're not actually doing something about that which we wish to move towards, then it kind of limits us. But yet, hope does also have perhaps, a silver lining or a gold nugget stuck inside of it, meaning that when I hope, for example, I'm imagining, I'm envisioning, and I'm not necessarily holding on to the hope. I just have that idea and that belief in all of humanity. So I have hope for humanity and I have hope for the earth, but yet I'm not, sitting and waiting for that to happen. So I have, in a sense, abandoned that previous version or that other version of that word hope. And that's the kind of thing when I said about the illuminating language part is that we often get mired in an understanding of a word that perhaps isn't for our benefit, just like the word I want, to be in lack. And that's really what the word want is. Right now, I have this squirrel that's eyeing me down, just standing right behind the camera. He knows that, I'm friendly and I would never, ever do anything to harm him. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today in the sense that, as I named the podcast episode today, it's, going, or what did I title it as? Well, anyways, I can't remember the exact title, but basically it's the idea of going all in for something that I believe is fully possible and potential. See, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a lot of changes going on in our world. A lot of changes. Like the most changes that have ever happened, I feel, in all of, existence in the last short while. And I say short while, I mean perhaps all of my lifetime. The amount of disclosures and revelations and, new fear tactics, the old fear tactics that are being deployed again and again, over and over again. Like there's just seems to be so many different things. And yet when I come to a small town like this, which by the way is named Hope, and that's where they shot or where they filmed the first Rambo movie. Anyways, when I come to a town like this, it almost seems like somewhat out of place. See, this town's done a phenomenal job of resisting corporate infrastructure from moving in the last 10 years. Sure, they've had a lot of these larger businesses jump in and fill up vacant areas, but yet they've managed to keep a lot of the small town charm. And in fact, this is a place that's often on the um, tour tours and such. When you come to the Lower Mainland, like going to Hope is something that you come to see. There's this amazing place that I was a few days back called the Tunnels, and it's basically a nice walk through where they used to have the railroads going through the over above the Coquihalla Canyon. And I did an amazing podcast, which when I publish this, perhaps I'll put it up at this time slot and definitely at the end of this video, because I sat on the side of a canyon or a cliffside overlooking a whitewater rapid canyon below. And I recorded this podcast where I talked about how Pokemon, the series, the TV show, and the card game truly do reflect and relate to this whole healing journey that I'm on. And that's where it kind of leads into today's talk, is talking about essentially making the decision to go all in. See, there's an effect on, or an action when you're playing poker. If you haven't known this or whatever, but I played some Texas Hold'em poker, and on there, you essentially are you can come to a point where whatever chips you have, you can push them all in and say that I'm all in. Essentially, it means that you're banking on that one hand to either win or you're off the table. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about when I talked about or when I wrote down the podcast title for this is, putting it on everything and on a hope and a prayer. That's something to do with like that. But a prayer, once again, to me means an action, and a hope in this case means, I'm envisioning a outcome that would be beneficial for absolutely everyone. So back to what I was saying before about, have you seen that this world is changing? The disclosures, the information coming out, and just overall the world around us. See, my reality when I was living in Maple Ridge, I could easily see that things were shifting. I could see that what normally would have happened before with so many different things, and I won't list the tons of things that I saw, but those things weren't being done, but yet other things were. Other things to hold on to normality. The things that perhaps like, fixing the sidewalks, those things didn't matter to the city, but yet holding giant expensive parties to, keep everyone drinking, I guess, or whatever it is they were doing, the town was willing to do that, but yet they weren't really willing to fix the sidewalks. They were just shaving them off and spraying yellow paint on them. But at the same time, they were planting thousands and thousands of dollars worth of flowers and having giant parties in the town square, or the supersized town, as I like to call it, because Maple Ridge is definitely not a city. Not a city when you compare it to other cities that I've been to, like Seoul or Shanghai or Beijing or London, Vancouver, even Toronto for sure, Los Angeles, those are cities. But when you look at Maple Ridge, far from a city, supersized town, I'd like to call it. Anyways, so the idea is that, well, as I mentioned in season 2 of Shawn's Thoughts, I'm going to be sharing, the things that I'm thinking about now, and that's definitely reflected in my new extension or bonus podcasts, which I've exclusively put on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon Music right now. And these are called Shawn's Thoughts After Hours, when I essentially just ramble on about whatever it is that I'm thinking about. These are not live streams like this one is today. These are, me recording them wherever it is that I am, usually off grid somewhere. And when I get a chance, I'll upload them. Normally after hours, I imagine that recording these in. Nonetheless, this whole new season of Shawn's Thoughts is about exploring the thoughts that I'm having right now. And one of those thoughts that I have had for a while and I'm, really banking on right now. Hello, squirrel. Is that the world is changing. And it's changing drastically to the point where more and more people are waking up every day to see some change, whether it's, the American president talking about aliens, or actually where I saw it first was on Fox News talking about aliens and showing all of these, other talking heads that were either confirming it or, blaming someone else because why hasn't it happened yet? We all know it's real and stuff like that. But and there's a lot of other, interesting things that are coming up, but this isn't for the news. If you want to watch the news, definitely head over to the United News Network. Sunny has some amazing news reports on there. But this is more of just, me recognizing that what I feel and what I've experienced and what I see is, coming to fruition. And I've often talked over the years about all these things that, would happen, that they were going to happen. And many people would stare and look at me and like look at the world around them and they'd be like, well, I don't see that happening. Oh, no, I don't see X, Y, and Z. And then, after a while, I recognized that it wasn't happening as much around me while I was there. And lately, in even my drive here and around, I see a lot more for sale signs. A lot more people are selling their homes, and there is a lot more. variety of people as well, meaning that there's even up here in Hope, the A&W as well as the gas stations. They have a lot of Indian people working here, people from India or Pakistan. Um, yeah, and the transition or the changeover in the people living in different locations. As I mentioned before, my son and I, we had the opportunity to drive across Canada all the way from Nanaimo to Montreal. And during that time, I saw a considerable amount of evidence showing to me that things were different than, the narrative. We have this idea of land being scarce and overcrowding and such, but the overcrowding really only happens because all of the populations are being centralized in these smaller areas with these box-like condos where they're trying to get everyone to live in. But yet you come to a place like here in Hope and there's very few apartment buildings, and even the apartment buildings that are here, with the exception of one new one, they're rather large, and the area to walk around is rather large. But as I drove across the country, the farms were huge, the acreage was huge, the houses were sitting in the middle of these giant, massive plots of land. Interestingly enough, the cattle ranches were mostly void of cattle. The farms were, many of them weren't even being used. You know, this idea that we have had too many people on Earth is kind of, in my opinion anyways, a farce, a joke. I've talked about that before, about I feel, maybe there's other reasons why they want us to believe that, there's just too many people. And we won't get into any of that right now. You only have to go back and listening to one of my other almost 200 podcasts, and I'm sure there'll be something in there about that. But back to what I was saying about going all in, that's essentially what I'm doing. I believe so full-heartedly in what I am doing at the moment, which is sharing my thoughts, sharing Shawn's thoughts, my thoughts with you. And it's, of great benefit, because if we can share more with each other, not just, sharing our anger and our hostility and, oh, you did this to me and, oh, you did that to me 2 years ago. If we can do more than share the negativity that many of us hold on to, if we can start sharing all the positive attributes of our lives to a higher degree, I truly do feel that what we're moving towards will be of a grand imagining, something that's beyond anything that we've ever possibly even potentially conceived of. See, I kind of believe that even with my blueprints playlist that I created, once again, I'll put that up there and at the end. So I'm going to make a reminder of those. At the end, we're going to do blueprints playlist and the Pokemon episode. Anyways, just note to myself. Well, maybe a note to you as well, to actually, after this podcast is over, I guarantee you it's worth it to watch one of those two videos as well, or that playlist in that video. But nonetheless, I digress. Not really, but a segue off. So I believe that, even those ideas that I have are essentially, as Paul Selig's books would propose it, is that they are ideas that have essentially been created from experiences of things that I have seen. Like, I watched Survivor, and on the fifth day, or the final home base of my adventure camp, I imagine there being a survivor like arena, and maybe even other things to do with Survivor, like a Survivor bar or something like that, or, just a whole bunch of huts made out of whatever it is we can make it out of, and whatever it is, but a whole Survivor themed like ending to that experience, where people who have made it all 5 days and made it all the way to the end, that they have the ability to compete in Survivor like experiences. But see, as I was saying, even that is created from something that I'm aware of. And why I'm mentioning that is because I do envision that what we could potentially experience in the so-called years to come are things that we have yet to even imagine, because we were limited by our perception of what was possible based on the things we either had in our possession or that even those things that we knew the rich people had in their possessions. Like, for instance, there's something called a med bed, and so many people I often hear about in the UNN community are sitting there waiting for med beds, waiting for a technology that they can jump into. And if you want to envision the med bed, go watch the movie Stargate, and you will see these devices in which the pharaohs or whatever the guy's name is, the slug bad guy, he would jump into and his body would regenerate. And as well as there's another movie called Elysium. That's another one with Matt Damon, and they show an example of a med bed as well. But yet there are so many people that are waiting for those med beds, waiting for, that quick fix, that easy fix. But yet I do believe that part of the whole healing process is us healing ourselves, us making that intentional desire to heal ourselves. So when we have problems with our eye or problems with our legs or problems with our liver, problems with any part of us, when we take our healing into our own hands, which is something that I had done, I feel that is a good example of going all in, just doing it and not hoping for the best, but having faith that the best will eventually transpire. And so back to the title again, you know, going all in or everything on a hope and a prayer, I feel that I am essentially doing that. I'm leaping off. It's kind of like that, I think it's called Stand By Me, or when that's movie about the group of boys is what I'm having in the image in my head right now. And, they're all standing at the side of the cliff. They're going to jump in. They all talk about jumping in. They all you know, bring each other up. I'm not even sure if this is in the movie. I just have these images, that red striped shirt and whatever. And then finally, when one boy does it, the rest of them jump in with him. And I kind of get the feeling that for a lot of different people out there, not just myself, but I mean a lot of other people like me, that we are jumping in first, that we are taking the plunge, taking the leap, going all in, because there are more than just me out there of people who believe our world is going to get infinitely better. And that's something that's hard, truly hard. I understand challenging is probably a better word. It's probably very challenging for so many people out there to actually envision that. Perhaps even you who are watching this now. Maybe you're on the other side. Maybe you're part of the group that has been controlled by the system, the AIs, the matrix, the whatever it is, insert word here. Maybe you have believed for such a long time that the world that is the way it is just as good as it gets. And yet, what if? What if we all chose to go all in? That we all, abandoned the hope for those who entered here. We let those, things go that we weren't really tied to, especially those material things, that big screen TV or that sports arenas, or I mean, not sports arenas, watching sports shows, like watching things that make you angry, watching anything or participating in anything that makes you angry, even letting those addictions go, that alcoholism, the smoking of tobacco, or the smoking of really any type of burnt substance, letting go of the anger, the hostility, the rage, the torment. Like, honestly, if someone hurt you 2 years ago and you've had 2 years to, heal it, by now it would be advantageous to have released that, because that could possibly be holding you back from something that's absolutely amazing. So going all in is simply the reliance or the acceptance of, I'm going to let it all go. I'm going to put it all out there and I'm going to make it happen. I'm not going to just hope. I'm not just going to pray that someone's going to come down and save me. I'm going to reach for the stars, grab it, and then just as I explained on my podcast Afterthought After Hours last night, 002, and I guess I'll link that maybe here if I'm able to. It's kind of like what I did yesterday when I ran through all of that landslide area, and there was rocks of all different sizes. Some of them were really pointy, some of them were sideways, and they were all different measurements in between them. I literally just almost sprinted through for a hiking sprint, trusting that something was going to hold my feet, and where my eyes had engaged onto prior to my foot leaving the ground, my foot was going to land there. It's kind of very similar to the lessons that I learned from Mark Rober. Mark Rober is an amazing father who created these series of videos to do with squirrels. And I definitely want to put that video up here because, Mark, your videos were phenomenal, especially those squirrel ones. And what he taught me in that video was that when the squirrels were ejected into the air and they were spinning around, that they would instantly catch where they were going to land, and then they'd prepare to land at it there. And I thought that that was a phenomenal, sequence of events. And it really did also play a role in my avalanche hike yesterday. And if you want to see some pictures of my avalanche hike of where I went to do that, you can look here on YouTube, and in my posts, you'll see some of the pictures that I've been doing and other information about that as well. And so, yeah, going all in. That's what I'm doing. I truly do believe that our world can be better. So much so that I put all that attention, effort, and energy into creating the Patreon community, into creating the ability to open up a PayPal account, which, you can go down into the description of this video, and there's a link there to send money to PayPal, because this is not necessarily just for me. Sure, I'm going to be the mouthpiece who walks around talking about things, sharing you his thoughts and showing you different things. But yet, I want to take this collective contribution and I want to, share it with those people who are prepared, willing, aligned, that God guides me to connect with. And believe me, there are so many people out in this world right now that deserve love. They deserve connection. They deserve, people to see past what they've been essentially projecting based on their traumas and their experiences, or even, the projections of the communities they live in, to see past all of that and to see, there is much more to look at with these people. And I say these people, basically I'm talking about, people that others would consider homeless. But no Homo sapien is homeless on Earth, because Earth, by the way, is our home. It's only the system that gave us the idea of what a home looks like. But quite honestly, who's in a better position? The person who's nomadic, living life on a bicycle. I saw so many of those people. They were taking long bicycle rides down the #1 highway and down the Lougheed Highway and up into the north. Those people that are carrying everything that they so-called own on their back, or the person who's stuck in a 500 square foot condo that's paying, crazy amounts of interest, working 2 jobs just to, you know, barely make it by. Which of those would you imagine is in a better situation? We all have our different ideas of what life is meant to be. And there are many people out there that are happy with whatever life they're living in, all power to them. Yet there still are at least 4 billion people on this planet, perhaps, that, maybe think a different way. And, you know, I got my bayonet or my sword, and I'm just striking out there and running first. So, yeah, this place, a little bit I'll tell you about. Hope, BC is a wonderful, beautiful place. It's surrounded by mountains. One of the mountains kind of looks like a pyramid cap on top of it out in the distance. There's so much wonderful energy here. It's an amazing place. If you ever have the opportunity to come over to British Columbia, I would imagine, as we move into New Earth, that we'll get rid of some of the newer buildings, some of the buildings that don't look like they should be here. Anyways, so yeah, I think I'm going to leave it right there. I think that I've had to say all I had to say, and I trust that whatever needed to be said was said, and that you perhaps had some great insight. So I encourage you, as I always do, self-reflect through comments. Not only does it help the channel, it helps, the podcast, it helps YouTube, it encourages YouTube actually to push my podcast out to more viewers. And even if you somehow want to continue suppressing me, for those people who are watching that do want to suppress, it's for your own benefit. Like right there, your benefit. That should outweigh any desire to suppress, because the world is changing and it's kind of like a tsunami wave, and there isn't no holding it back. You're not going to stand up with your hand and block that tsunami from coming. It's here. It's already moving towards us. And, we can either stand in front of it and gawk at it, or we can, share the information that it is coming and, work together to get whatever it is we need to, ensure the collective unity and growth of our amazing species, the Homo sapiens. So thank you so much for sharing your attention with me. I look forward to sharing more. I'm kind of looking at right now, I'm wondering, did my head get cut off in the image? And thank you, most importantly, to all the people, whomever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are, for sharing your attention with me and supporting me, even if not on Patreon and not on PayPal or not on any of the other sites, that you're here just with me right now. Thank you so much. It does definitely mean so much that you are here with me. And I look forward to sharing a lot more news as more people join this community of wonderful, amazing Homo sapiens that I'm looking to create. Humans are welcome too. Anyways, thank you so much. And, now that you've listened to this, if you made it all the way here, please go over, and this won't be here, like whatever. I'm not going to post it in the future because I'm going to post those other two videos. But please go over to one of my other playlists, either Moving Portraits, Changing Stations with Shawn. It's a podcast that I created, or even my AI funny shorts that I created. Go over and watch one of those and let them all play. Show YouTube that New Earth is here and we aren't going anywhere but forward, or that way anyways.